Every once in a while, FromSoft shows up to shake the gaming world up and send everyone into a frenzy. Most of it's love, but some people don't like getting filtered and skill checked. It happens on every game they release, and it's always hilarious. But to fully show what this game has to offer, there will be some spoilers, but nothing major that'll take away from the game. And I have to say this because this moment, this iconic scene, is something I'm going to remember for years.
I won't miss.
Secondary shield down.
The level of effort, detail, and immersion FromSoft brings to the table is always unmatched, and Armored Core 6 delivers a true mech fan's dream in a big way. But like every FromSoft game, they always farm a ridiculous amount of love and salt with the new titles. And even though we all love the gold mine some of these reviews become, Armored Core 6 got hit with a wave I don't think anybody was expecting. And even though it's fun to make fun of these people and have a laugh at their expense, it's also important to talk about why people get so frustrated with games like this. When the first boss was literally just a listen to the NPCs talking at you, check and W key at it with your laser sword. This actually stems from an issue where most games promote instant gratification and just easy rewards, rather than climbing the mountain and overcoming ridiculous challenges so that you feel rewarded and have meaningful gratification, and more importantly, meaningful memories. And that's exactly what Armored Core delivered for me. This is going to be my full review of all the good and bad things about the game, because once you start trying to play the game the way it's meant to be played, to build the perfect mech to counter every boss that they feed you the tools for, it makes almost every boss a complete joke. And that in itself is the difficulty slider. It just requires you to grow, learn, and get better instead of just receiving that free handout. I personally don't like difficulty sliders because it always just turns the hardest thing into a damage sponge. And they put that power in our hands to make the game as challenging or as easy as we want it to be. If you do want to build the perfect mech for your playstyle and brute force every boss just by learning it so you can make your dream build work, that's when you're truly going to see the full potential of Armored Core 6. And like usual, I made the Berserker build and just W keyed every boss, every fight, every mission, every arena boss, and blew away my own expectations of the game. I had way more fun than I ever imagined I would have playing my way. This game really came down to skill diff or build diff. Builds just cheese the fights, but if you really learn the patterns and gimmicks for every boss, you can do them with anything or even nothing equipped. And it's a good thing that it's like that. It makes it more accessible to everyone. And some of the challenges are massive hurdles that feel so good when you overcome them. All the negativity I see around people getting filtered by different bosses simply comes down to not wanting to learn or having an open mind. So seeing such a niche game genre for people that love mechs and all their nuances, port that challenge versus reward over from Souls-like games and take it to a different level with no iframes and AC6 made it overwhelming for a lot of people and forced them to think and build a strategy to win, whether it was just brute force or tactical. And obviously people are going to compare AC6 to other FromSoft games, especially Elden Ring, and in the sense of immersion, gameplay, and universe, it's absolutely amazing, if not perfect for what it is. But saying it's anything more than a mech game is disingenuous, because then you're just projecting something onto it that it isn't. The magic really starts once you learn how to control your AC and get the flow of the game down. The controls have a natural flow to them, and the movement feels so crisp and responsive to every input, and it lets you have almost complete control over your character. And a lot of games that make you play as a human can't even come close to how this makes you feel as a massive mech. And this next part has some heavy boss spoilers, so skip to the next timestamp if you don't want to see them, because I really can't describe in words how it feels to fly around, dashing insanely fast, fighting with everything you've got to overcome what they throw at you. And this mission where they send you flying through space to fight off waves of capital ships was so cinematic that it made me feel like I was a Gundam. It's something I've only been able to imagine and dream about, but it got brought to life, and the campaign throws some monsters at you. It's not just a bunch of massive bullet sponges like I originally thought it was going to be. There's actually no bullet sponges, and almost every fight feels like an epic battle. Starting the game with the tutorial boss, they set you up to learn, and as you progress to fight the mobile fortress and blow him away, you start feeling the scale of what you're capable of. Then when you battle Balteus, the biggest roadblock and gatekeeper of Chapter 1, it forces you to learn his patterns or just brute force W key at him. And when you overcome this first real challenge, you feel like you accomplished something special. And it gets even better on New Game Plus when you go back fully kitted and tear him to pieces in a few seconds. But when you do get to the Sea Spider, that was the first massive difficulty spike in the game that forced me to counter it, and it was the first time that the game made me do that. And when I got to the Ice Worm and I got that special like gimmick gameplay cutscene, it was just breathtaking, and after taking it down, the whole fight just made me fall in love with the entire game. This and one other scene are two things I will never forget about this game. And I'm not going to show the other scene because it's a massive spoiler. But after that, when you go fight Ibis, it's like you're fighting a Gundam and you really have to learn its attack patterns. This is one of the coolest and best made fights in the entire game, and it was one of the most rewarding bosses for me to beat. But when you get to the final bosses, that's truly when things start getting out of control. So these are like the big spoilers of the game. Walter is just kind of a meme boss, but that is the best story ending in my opinion. And the second hardest boss in the game for me actually ended up being Ayre, but that was because of my build. I didn't want to change it up, and I promised myself I would beat the game with this one build. And while I was still learning the attack patterns, I actually got my first kill. I just started sweating super hard when I saw the opportunity to take it home. But I think the greatest challenge in the entire game was all mine. This is like the NG++ final playthrough boss, and this fight is just ridiculous. This was the pinnacle challenge of the game for me, and beating it felt insanely rewarding. Taking this guy to the cleaners gave me a level of satisfaction I never thought I'd have from beating a PvE boss in a single player game. The only problem I need to bring up with some bosses is that there's a lot to keep track of sometimes. Good examples are how fun it feels to dodge a sword attack or dodge a massive move that would have killed you, but how bad it feels to get stagger locked when your break bar isn't maxed, and how chaotic it can be to just track a million missiles off screen mentally. Now, the only part of combat during the campaign I would say is weak is when you have to go through a mission and fight a bunch of normal MTs, but it gives you that overwhelming Gundam power fantasy that's so nice to have after getting the shit kicked out of you. And I saw in a few places that they said that the story was weak. The story only comes together if you paid attention and listened to it, but during your second playthrough is really where you start seeing the layers of it. The story in this game is so interesting after you see all the different perspectives of things that happen, and you wouldn't be able to understand or grasp it unless you do that full NG++ playthrough. It added so many levels of depth that I wasn't expecting and truly made it one of the better campaigns that I've played through. I'm a big fan of New Game Plus, and I think it was just done to a level of perfection in AC6. And I don't want to spoil it for you because of how much work they put into it, but most people aren't playing a game like this for the story. It's all about the action. And when you PvP, you really get a grasp of the pacing and combat. This is probably the strongest and the weakest part of the entire game. The base way to find a game is extremely dated, and sometimes you just get error issues when searching, and the only way to fix this is to use a VPN. And we know FromSoft can add matchmaking. And I think the current setup is good for tournament formats, but having a base matchmaker of 1v1, 3v3, 5v5 and like a 10-man free-for-all would add a ridiculous amount of replayability to the game. And I think not having matchmaking is my biggest negative about Armored Core 6. The core gameplay of PvP is pure chaos. It's just fast, non-stop action until the clock runs down, and the pacing of it is just an adrenaline rush with some of the best combat I've seen in a long time. And the netcode behind it is very well done, because even when you play against people on higher ping, it still feels very responsive. And I think a big part of that is not having iframes. This removed a lot of problems exclusive to them where you're not guessing when you shot at somebody or not if it was that iframe. And if you've been here for a while, you know I love PvP, and a lot of games get ruined by bad netcode with iframes. So I'm happy to see something so different with such fast skill-based combat take it to the next level. But balance-wise, it's really not the best. A lot of people are still figuring out what's best right now, but hovering missile boats and one-shot railguns are real standouts. But even if you don't like PvP, you can get a taste of it with the arena system versus pre-made ACs. And it lets you test different builds out to see how they might perform. But overall, it's just a very well done system that everybody who's tried it absolutely loves. I just wish there was more of them to fight. Even in New Game Plus Plus, they made them a greater part of the story, and I just wanted to fight more of them. Honestly, if they had a ranked system and put like the top 10 or 100 player loadouts in as arena bosses that were just piloted by AI that people could practice against, it would evolve into something that we've only seen in like an anime. Overall, Armored Core 6 to me is one of the best mech games I've ever played, and the biggest positive easily starts with the gameplay. No other mech game has ever felt this good, and this is clearly the new standard. It's polished to perfection in PvE and PvP. Then when we look at the overall story after you've played through all 3 times, it's amazing in itself and has a lot more depth than your first playthrough, and sets up Armored Core 7 or some sort of expansion. Then the customization is unmatched. This is something I really didn't touch on earlier, but like full color control on every piece of your mech with insanely detailed decals truly lets you create exactly what you want the way you want it. And the loadouts are something out of like an anime mech dream. If you like anything close to this genre, you can build exactly what you want. It really just brings your imagination to life. Then the PvP feels amazing, and the only game that even came close to this in my opinion for like mechs was something called Chrome Hounds, and it came out a really long time ago, but it was also made by FromSoft. It was a lot slower, but the customization was super in-depth, and I wish they would expand this game into something like that because it had a really fun multiplayer setup. The only misstep I think they really made is, as fun as the PvP is, it's also the entire replayability of the game after you've gone full completionist mode. And I did get like 40 hours out of replaying the game, so I think that is very good for a single player game. And I did feel good about all 3 playthroughs because of how well they tied together. But going past that and turning PvP into something that more people wanted to participate in and lowering the barrier to entry by just adding that quick matchmaking is something I think is really important for Armored Core 6's future, and something FromSoft has already done in the past. Armored Core 6 might just be the perfect mech game we've all been waiting for. So if you were frustrated at any point, just remember it's a game built for you to learn and grow and customize your build to counter the boss. And if you learn it the way it's meant to be played, it won't matter if you're a mecha fan. I think you'll fall in love with it and truly enjoy the game. My overall rating for the game is a solid 9 out of 10. I think the campaign gets a 10 out of 10 from me. I loved all the bosses. I loved the PvE and playing through it. The arena's amazing. But that last point is left to what the PvP could be. So let me know about your experience with the game so far. My most memorable moments were battling the worm and fighting this nonsense. But that's going to be all for now, and I hope you have a great night.